The so-called ceasefire that Donald Trump was bragging about that accepted all of Iran's 10 demands, as expected, is falling apart right away. It's blowing up in Donald Trump's face and in the world's face, frankly. What you just saw there at the beginning of the video is chaos unfolding in Beirut, Lebanon's capital, as Israel carries out a wave of airstrikes across the country, hitting what it said were more than 100 targets in 10 minutes. Folks, the scene was apocalyptic in Lebanon, and Lebanon was absolutely included in the ceasefire that Donald Trump agreed to. The mediator was Pakistan of the ceasefire agreement. The Prime Minister of Pakistan had previously said yesterday, of course, Lebanon is included and Hezbollah is included. That was one of the 10 negotiating positions of Iran that Donald Trump accepted. And Donald Trump said, we agree with the 10-point plan. Now, Iran has shut down, yet again, the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's always been shut down, or I should say under their control, where their allies could use it. But anyone allied with the United States and Israel could not use it. But earlier this morning, 2 ships were escorted by Iranian naval vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. And then Israel hit Beirut. And I mean, it's devastating. 100 killed, 500 wounded. Hospital is filled right now in Beirut, and Iran said the Strait of Hormuz shut down once again. We're not letting any ships through, which they weren't really going to let through unless they had a naval escort. And Iran was paid about $1 to $2 per barrel of the oil that were on the tankers, which could basically be around, $1 million to $2 million per tanker. But that's what is going on right now. And this ceasefire has blown up. Now you have, and by the way, it's being confirmed even on state regime media, which calls itself Fox. Jennifer Griffin says Iran state media Fars posted to Telegram, while 2 tankers transited this morning, they will block the Strait of Hormuz as long as Israel attacks Lebanon. And this was from the Fars news agency, so you can see it in their own words, unfiltered right here. This is Iran's media agency. Oil tankers halt passage through the Strait of Hormuz after Israel attack on Lebanon. Simultaneous with the Israeli attack on Lebanon, the passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz has been halted. Then Iranian social media accounts are posting, closed until further notice. Another one says, hey, Trump, if you don't have a leash for the rabid dog Israel, should we get one for you? Pakistan's Prime Minister, meanwhile, Shehbaz Sharif, is saying that it is aware of ceasefire violations that undermine the spirit of the peace process. This is from Pakistan's Prime Minister. He writes, violation of ceasefires have been reported at a few places across the conflict zone, which undermine the spirit of the peace process. I earnestly and sincerely urge all parties to exercise restraint and respect the ceasefire for 2 weeks as agreed upon, so that diplomacy can take a lead role towards the peaceful settlement of the conflict. And now, again, if you look at what the Prime Minister of Pakistan previously said when the ceasefire was announced, let me just read it to you. This was what he said yesterday. So there was no dispute that Lebanon was included because this was the announcement of the ceasefire. With the greatest humility, I am pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America, along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. So this morning, Donald Trump's been frantically posting on his social media platforms. He's calling this reporter and that reporter. He called Jonathan Karl at ABC. He called Liz Landers. Here's what he says to Liz Landers. A few minutes after the Pentagon briefing wrapped up this morning, I'll tell you about that in a moment, I spoke with Donald Trump briefly to ask about the latest with Iran. I asked about Lebanon, which is still being hit, and if he'd seen that. Donald Trump says, yeah, they were not included in the deal. I asked why not and if they should have been. Donald Trump, because of Hezbollah. They were not included in the deal. That'll get taken care of too. It's all right. I asked, and you're okay with the Israelis continuing to hit them? Donald Trump, it's part of the deal. Everyone knows that. That's a separate skirmish, okay? You gotta talk faster. I tried to ask if he regretted that Truth Social post about wiping out a civilization and noted that there was a huge pushback to that statement from Democrats. Then he hung up on me. Then he called Jonathan Karl at ABC. Jonathan Karl writes, this morning I asked Donald Trump if he's okay with the Iranians charging a toll. Remember, it's about $2 per gallon of oil. If he's okay with Iranians charging a toll for all ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz. And he told me there may be a joint U.S.-Iran venture to charge tolls. We're thinking about doing it as a joint venture. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of other people. It is a beautiful thing. Iran has not agreed to that and will never agree to that. Remember early when Trump and Netanyahu's invasion of Iran began, and Donald Trump's like, me and the Ayatollah, we're going to do a JV together and control the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran was laughing at that concept. Donald Trump, again, just lying about every aspect of this deal. Iran was very clear about what its 10 points were for weeks. We've been reporting. Here's what they list as their 10 points. Then Donald Trump yesterday posted a message saying that he agreed with Iran's 10-point framework. Of course, Iran was going to take that deal then because Donald Trump agreed to utter humiliation and surrender for the United States. Those 10 points were the list of Iran's dream scenario and utter humiliation for the U.S. And Donald Trump agreed to that. That's what I've been trying to say. And there have been a lot of people yesterday, right, in the Trump regime, in the right-wing media, where they were attacking the MeidasTouch network when we were pointing this out, and other journalists who were pointing it out. I mean, you had Stephen Chung, who was attacking reporters and saying, you don't know what the effing 10 points are. You're just spreading Nigerian propaganda, right? And you had all these other right-wing people like, this was a big victory. What a great negotiating position. I'm like, have you read the 10 points? Anybody, can we read? Can we make reading great again? Could we make facts and details and being meticulous and careful back again? Could we make being a grown-up and an adult and using logic great again? That's what I want to bring back. But by the way, this morning, state regime media, which calls itself Fox, now has to report what the 10 points are. Because everybody knows what they can't hide it anymore. They tried to frame the issue yesterday as a win. Remember, I reported, no, this was a surrender by Donald Trump. Even Mark Levin, right? The guy who was Donald Trump's, he's a Fox host, but he's like basically in Donald Trump's cabinet at this point. I'm exaggerating, but he was one of the main people pushing for the war. He even goes, these 10 points are an absolute disaster, because this morning on Fox and Friends, state regime media, they went through the 10 points. And guess what? It was the same 10 points that I've been saying that Iran's been talking about for weeks now. As you know from watching the MeidasTouch network, have I been saying these 10 points 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I've been saying, here are their 10, remember the non-negotiables, here are their 10 points. They won't agree to anything unless you agree to their 10 points. Watch as state regime media says it. And here is how, and you saw Mark Levin go, these 10 points are a disaster. Play this clip from Fox and Friends.
That includes 10 separate points. Some of them include the U.S. guaranteeing a non-aggression pact with Iran, continuing Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance that Iran can enrich uranium for its nuclear program, removal of all primary sanctions on Iran, removal of secondary sanctions, an end of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran, an end to the IAEA's resolutions on Iran's nuclear program, compensation, payment for Iran and its war damage, withdrawal of U.S. forces from the region, and a ceasefire on all fronts. Those are a number of points that are not going to be reached, and the next 2 weeks are going to be critical as negotiators try to hammer this out.
You know what's easier than fixing a problem? Not having the problem in the first place. Your liver is one of those organs that you don't think about until you have to. Supporting it daily is one of those small things that can make a huge difference in how you feel overall, and that's where Dose comes in. Dose for your liver is a clinically backed liver health supplement. This isn't just another capsule or powder. Dose is a liquid supplement. It's taken in a daily 2-ounce shot, and it tastes like fresh squeezed orange juice. Here's why it matters. Your liver is your body's filter. It processes everything you consume and handles over 500 plus daily functions: energy production, digestion, fat metabolism, vitamin storage. When your liver is overworked, you feel it. Dose helps cleanse the liver of unwanted stressors that may be slowing your liver down, and it promotes daily liver function so that your liver can do its job. Zero sugar, zero junk, zero calories. And when you take Dose daily, you're going to reduce sluggishness, get rid of those midday crashes, support your metabolism, and even aid your daily digestion. Plus, this is the real deal. There are 2 double-blind placebo-controlled studies showing Dose's positive impact on liver enzyme levels. Are you ready to give your liver the support it deserves? Head to dosedaily.co/Meidas or enter Meidas to get 35% off your first subscription. Your body does so much for you. Let's do something for it. That's dosedaily.co/Meidas, MEIDAS, for 35% off your first month subscription.
You're having people say this. Rupert Myers. So next month, the U.S. strikes Greenland and then ends up with Trump giving Alaska to Denmark, right? They're saying what a bad deal maker Donald Trump is. He invades Greenland and Alaska is then given to Denmark. Woohoo, big victory. As you know, I mean, Ed Blake goes, this is the Alina Habba of ceasefires. We went into court for a parking ticket and now we left with a DUI. Donald Trump's been posting on social media frantically this morning. This is what he writes this morning, because he's trying to frame this as a victory, as a win. So early morning, he goes, the United States will work closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. Just pause there. Why do we have the stupidest person in the world in the Oval Office? I mean this. Why do we have the biggest lying piece of trash human being in the Oval Office? What do you mean a regime change? It's a more powerful version of the Islamic Republic. Great work, Donald. Regime change. One Ayatollah to a younger version. Great work, Donald. There will be no enrichment of uranium, and the United States will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried nuclear dust. Okay, pause there. Did you read the 10-point plan, Donald, that you wrote about yesterday, that you've embraced that framework? You know what it says in the 10-point plan? It says that Iran continues to enrich uranium. It's one of the points in the plan that you said you agreed to yesterday. So now you're going to be like, oh, I never agreed to that. I'm not going to do the deal. Then the ceasefire ends, which basically it's a ceasefire in name only now anyway, right? And the Strait of Hormuz is closed and nothing changes. And we drag this on just like you did with COVID, like a miracle. It's all going to go away. And we pretend that all this stuff isn't happening, while in fact, it's a ceasefire in name only right now. Donald Trump goes, it's now and has been under very exacting satellite surveillance Space Force. Nothing has been touched from the date of attack. We are and will be talking tariff and sanctions relief with Iran. He's doing the tariff thing again. You're talking about tariffs. This guy's just an idiot. He's just an idiot. Many of the 15 points have already been agreed to. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So now, Donald, you see what he's doing here? Because remember, the United States had the 15-point plan, which was surrender by Iran. Iran had the 10-point plan, surrender by the United States. Let me just ask you all of this, because I want to make sure my reporting is as objective as possible. What did Donald Trump post yesterday? What was his post yesterday? We agree to the framework of Iran's 10-point plan, with most of those 10 points already being agreed to. That's what Donald Trump posted yesterday. Because Donald Trump's a lifelong fraud, a con artist, this is the type of stuff he would do with real estate deals. This is how he would screw people over. Oh, the contract says, no, it doesn't. What are you going to do? Let's just sue each other. You know, that's Donald Trump's behavior his whole life. And now he's doing it in a geopolitical sense that just is breaking and has destroyed the power of the United States. It's done. It's over. Irreparable at this point. It's clear. And so he's saying, that's why he goes 15 points. It ain't the 15-point, Donald. You agreed to the 10 points. And so now I guess this is Trump's lifelong strategy. Well, now I'm going to pretend I did the 15 points. And I'm, okay, well then the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed. What benefit does that have to anybody? right? So yes, the market will go up a little bit. People will react, but long term, you are systemically breaking the United States. And then you know what happens? Then some Democratic president comes into power, right? Whether it's a Biden or, not in the future, but, Biden the last time, whoever wins in the future, right? And then all the Republicans act holier than thou and then blame that guy or that guy or that woman, right? And they're like, oh my God, you're screwing it up. Because you have to fix this freaking mess that was created. You're the worst. And then they act like, I'm a budget hawk. I'm a deficit hawk after they do all this stuff. Don't you see the playbook? Don't you see what they're doing in real time right now? And by the way, as I'm reporting this, Israel attacks a funeral in East Lebanon and kills at least 10. Israel is saying publicly, we will continue to strike Hezbollah in Lebanon after all of these massive strikes. And they just hit a funeral right now. What else is taking place this morning? As I told you, I'll do a whole other video on this. But the DOJ is saying they will be blocking the deposition of Pam Bondi, who's no longer the Attorney General, before the House Oversight Committee. I'm going to do another video on that. So more cover up of the child sex trafficking, the Epstein files. They're blocking Pam Bondi's from having a deposition in the House Oversight Committee. These are such a group. This is such a group of scumbags. Is this the biggest group, setting aside your politics, right? These are just terrible human beings. These are the worst people possible. I want to point this out, though. Yaroslav Trofimov, who's a Wall Street Journal's main foreign policy correspondent, and he's very even-keeled, even-tempered, matter of fact. Here's what he goes. This is Wall Street Journal's main foreign policy guy who does not usually show like strong emotion like this in posts. So far, it seems like Trump's ceasefire is unilateral. The U.S. stopped bombing Iran. Iran keeps bombing the Gulf states. Also, the effing strait hasn't reopened to free navigation. That's how he's framing it. What about also... So he's now saying Iran's bombing the Gulf states. What about what I just showed you there with Israel bombing Lebanon? And don't get me wrong. What I showed you there wasn't they just bombed Hezbollah. They bombed all of Beirut. That's why I'm showing the footage. They bombed southern Beirut. They blew it all up. And there was a ton of civilians who are dead. What are we talking about there? Pete Hegseth this morning says... nothing we've done, not a single troop has been put in harm's way. Play this clip.
Oil and fund your terror regime. So he did make that choice. That was his choice. He was a president of peace, and he's been willing to make those really tough calls that the American people elected him to do. Nothing we've done, not a single thing we've done. This is a typical, of course, it's ABC. Not a single thing we've done has put an American troop in more of a harm's way. We've only set our troops up to harm Iranian military capabilities, which they've done to devastating fashion. And
more from Hegseth saying the Iranian people should take advantage of this opportunity. Let's play it.
The second one was about the people. Listen, I would love to see the Iranian people take advantage of this opportunity. They have been oppressed by the previous regime, and they'll have a new opportunity with this regime. That remains to be seen. That was not our objective in this effort. But they're brave people. Horrible things have been done to them by the previous regime.
And Hegseth says, don't worry, we'll still be hanging around. That's what he said this morning. Let's play it.
For decades. But what does that entail in terms of our military presence at this juncture?
Yeah, we'll be hanging around. We're not going anywhere. We're going to make sure Iran complies with this ceasefire and then ultimately comes to the table and makes a deal. So we'll stay put, stay ready, stay vigilant.
And then finally, you had J.D. Vance this morning spreading more Kremlin propaganda while he's over in Hungary, trying to get Viktor Orban elected as Trump works with Putin in Hungary to manipulate the elections coming up in a few days in Hungary. Here's what J.D. Vance is saying that, again, just he's been continuing to spread these conspiracies and lies about Zelensky and Ukraine over there. Let's play it.
Ukrainian influence. What is the situation in your country, and how do you see this in Hungary?
So first of all, I wasn't even aware that Zelensky had said that he was going to send private soldiers to the prime minister's residence until yesterday. Victor actually told me that, and then I went and looked it up. Almost couldn't believe it's true, but it's true. That's completely scandalous. You should never have a foreign head of government or a foreign head of state threatening the head of government of an allied nation. It's preposterous. It's unacceptable. And what I find so interesting about, there's a lot of conversation about foreign influence in our elections.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you all think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. We appreciate you so much.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.